Welcome back to the Left-Handed Bandit Part 2 mobile paint party experience for I'd Rather Be on the Beach. So, before our break, we had a wet canvas, wet sky, wet water. The water is looking just a tad bit muddy, a little bit dark. And the water, at least on my end, is looking a bit darker as well. So, with the canvas now being dry to the touch, I'm trickling my finger across the canvas and I'm feeling no stickiness. That's a good sign to be able to tell if our canvas is wet or not, and my canvas is not in the water or in the sky. So with it now being dry, I can go in, layer up, and make my colors a lot more vibrant. Now, believe it or not, we are just over halfway through with the painting. It's these next couple of details that we do that will allow us to really bring our painting to life. And on top of that, we have to be just a teeny bit systematic with how we plot our next couple of colors so that as we're working on one section, the other section can dry. So make sure you have a fair amount of colors. Pour yourself some more paint if you need to. We're going to be starting again with that foam brush. I am dipping it in water. I'm not going to bang it to the bottom of the cup. Just lightly swish it around. Tap both sides of the cup. I'm going to dab both sides of my paintbrush off on my paper towel. I'm getting the excess water out of my paintbrush. So, with that now being a cleanish foam brush, I'm going to start back with the color blue. Taking just a touch of blue, I'm going to come right to the top of that canvas. And as I'm adding blue to the top, I'm going to be very, very careful not to use too much, because again, if we use too much blue paint, then that's going to allow our canvas to get real muddy and take a long time to dry. So I'm just mixing in some blue paint. I'm changing the colors of my paintbrush, changing the direction of my paintbrush, I mean to say, so that it makes thinner and thicker strokes. And that's as much blue as I want here. And it's still messy, but that's okay. I'm going to wipe the excess off of my paper towel. I'm going to go into my purple next. So with a little bit of purple paint, we're going to work our way down on that right side, right underneath the blue. And we're mainly focusing on this right side over here. If you would like to balance this purple out a little bit, add a little bit on the left side. I'm going to wipe the excess paint off of my paintbrush and onto my paper towel again. I am not dipping my paintbrush in water. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go back into my white paint. So I'm using white paint for this step. I'm going to add just a touch here, maybe up here, to these different areas so that that white paint can blend into my blue and my purple. It's going to make some interesting tones. It's going to smooth it out a lot more. I'm going side to side. It's going to make it a lot more vibrant. It's going to cause some nice hues and tones. If you have too much paint on your paintbrush, feel free to wipe it off on the paper towel, get it cleanish again, and then go right back into it. And we're blending these colors and we're layering right on top of the previous colors. So that way we have a nice, vibrant, pretty sky. So I got about enough blue and purple on there, but seem to be missing out on some oranges and yellows. So by simply wiping our paintbrush off on the paper towel again, I'm not going to dip it in water. I'm going to go in and I'm going to mix up some yellow and some orange and some reds on my plate. So I'm going to grab a touch of red, maybe find a clean area, and then go right into your yellow as well. Mix that in. We're going to mix up some orange. Make sure we have a little bit of yellow left over because we're going to still need that in just a sec. I'm mixing up some orange paint. If you get a little bit of blue in that, it's no big deal. Keep on going. So take a sec to mix up your orange. If I'm moving a bit too fast for you, feel free to pause the video and start it up again when everybody's on the same page. So I'm going back into this lower area with some orange here. And I'm just doing a little bit of orange here as well. And then for this remaining open area, I'm going to add some yellow. So what I'm going to do before, and again, before you grab your yellow, is rinse your paintbrush off or your foam brush. Tap it on the side of your cup and make sure you're getting that excess water out of your paintbrush. So that way our paintbrush is not too muddy. That yellow is a very vibrant color, and it's easy to pollute it. So in order to not pollute it as much, we want to get that excess dirty water out of the bristles. We're coming back in to those open areas with yellow paint, and you'll see that it starts to get a bit more vibrant as we layer up. But just be careful not to add too many streaks of paint, because that's going to slow us down later. So I'm working in between those areas, very lightly stroking on this yellow paint. It's going to mix with this orange paint. It's going to get a bit more vibrant for us, more like a tropical sky. And that's looking nice and clean, but I want to add just a little more white paint. That's going to bring this to life just a bit more. So maybe a little bit of white here, a little bit of white here, and then lightly blend those. And I think that's going to do it for our sky, at least for now. I'm liking the way that looks, so I'm going to pause right there. So if you are liking your sky, feel free to stop wherever you're at right now. If you don't like the sky, feel free to add more, pause the video. However, I'm liking the sky and I want to give it the chance to dry. So I'm going to switch to my water again next. So for the water, we're not going to be using the foam brush. We're going to switch from our foam brush. We can just toss that in the water and switch to our detailer brush, okay? So we're switching to the detailer brush for the next few minutes, most of the remainder of the painting, but we'll switch back to the foam brush at some point, more than likely. But with this detailer brush, it's a bit smaller than the foam brush. I'm going to swish it around in water. I'm not banging it to the bottom of my cup. I'm tapping both sides off on my edge. I'm dabbing both sides of the paintbrush off on my paper towel. So with this detailer brush, we're going to be doing essentially the same thing we did earlier with the foam brush. However, just like the sky, we have a nice dry layer, and we can layer up to make these colors just a bit more vibrant. So I'm going to go into my blue first. You want to make sure you do have some white left over for later. So feel free to pour some more white if you need it. So I'm going to just take a second to pour more white, but with my detailer brush, I'm using blue paint. And don't mind my messy plate. It always seems to happen, and yours should be fairly messy as well. It's a sign of a true artist. But once I get back in here with this brush, I'm going to work my way towards the center with random horizontal brush strokes. Now space them out just a little bit. There's no particular structure that you have to utilize for this step. The more space and the more variety of strokes of horizontal lines you have, the more detailed your water is going to look. So you don't have to put them in the exact same places that I'm putting mine in. You can leave some different spaces. You can open up some more spaces, but try to get it something like mine. Or if you're admiring your neighbors, then you can ask them for tips, and maybe they can tell you some information about how to get yours looking kind of like theirs. So I'm liking the way that's looking. I'm going to wipe both sides of my paintbrush off on my paper towel. I'm not dipping it in water yet. I want these colors to mix on my canvas and on my paintbrush. So with this wiped off paintbrush, I'm going to grab just a touch of white paint. So I'm grabbing white paint, and with this white paint, I'm going to add very small, faint strokes between some, not necessarily all, but some of these blue streaks. And you can probably guess what we're going to do. We are going to blend that together. So while this paint is still wet, we're going to go side to side. And we're going to change the direction of our paintbrushes, play around with the directions, and the more you play around, the more details it'll give you. And then we can even layer up again later to make this water just a bit more vibrant. But right now, we'll take it step by step, and we'll blend in what we have for now. If you're feeling like you don't have enough white and you're liking the effect, then feel free to go back in, add more white. I'm gonna add just a touch more to mine. And later on, I am going to add a couple more white lines just to make this pop just a little bit more. So I'm kind of liking that water right there. I think it's going to come together really nicely. So now we're at a point where we have our sky filled in. We have our water filled in. They're both looking more vibrant than they were the first go around as we layered up. Now we just have our simple base of the painting to do. Now these next couple of steps are simple, but they can get tricky. So if you feel the need to rewind the video, I encourage you to do so. But just try not to overthink this. I may do it just a bit weird when I show you these techniques, but I promise you they're easier than I'm explaining them. I'm probably complicating it. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna jump back to the foam brush. We're gonna make sure your foam brush is nice and cleanish. Tap it off on the side of your cup, get that excess water out of that foam brush. And I'm going to dab both sides off on my paper towel. Had to get another paper towel because I'm making a mess over here. So, with this clean-ish foam brush, doesn't have to be 100% clean because we're going to be mixing in very dark color. We want to take some of this black paint that we have. So I have black paint on my brush. Well, a little bit of red too, but I'll wipe that off. So I got black paint that I'm working with. And we're going to need a fair amount of black paint. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill in these humps that we see on our canvas right up to that black line that we had earlier. So we're taking that foam brush, we're playing around with the directions of the foam brush, we're filling in these humps. Nice smooth-ish application. The foam brush makes it real easy to smooth out your paint and flatten it out so that there's no globs. So take advantage of that while we can, because in a second we'll be switching back over to our fine detailer, and that won't be as easy to flatten these different big gaps of color. So I'm using that foam brush to fill in this entire bottom section with paint. As we get closer to the bottom of the canvas, feel free to lift your canvas if you are using an easel so that you can get the bottom of it. Another thing I want to mention, if you would like to fill in the sides, the outer edges of the painting, you can do so at the end of the painting. For now, we're just going to stick to this. If you've already started filling out your edges, then you're probably a rock star. So I'm filling in this entire bottom section, and I am making sure that there are no white gaps showing through. I don't want any white background at all. As we even got that black on right there, the painting is starting to look drastically different because of the contrast between those colors in the water and the sky and the dark mass that's at the bottom. So take a second, make a couple of smoothing brush strokes. I have a bunch of globs on mine, so I'm just gonna simply smooth them out. If you press just a tad bit hard against your canvas, you don't have to press too hard, but press just a tad bit harder, it will remove excess streaks and globs of paint. So if you feel like you have too much black paint down here, then smoothly and slightly firmly press against that canvas and it will subtract paint from these areas. So I got a nice smooth blob on the bottom of my canvas. I want to add just a little bit of white detail. So I'm going to take that foam brush, wipe the excess off with my paper towel. I am not dipping it in water right now. If we dip that foam brush too much, it's going to start picking up too much water. We don't want that, at least not right now. I'm going to grab just a touch of white paint, just a touch. I'm going to go over here to the right side. I'm going to dab on just a few dabs of white here. Maybe come on the left side, dab on randomly, of course, just a couple dabs, and losing the center of the canvas. I'm just going to adjust it for you. A couple dabs on the right, couple dabs on the left, and I'm going to add just a few streaks toward the middle. Now, as long as you don't have too much black paint on your canvas, then after we add these dabs, I want you to remember to lightly hold your brush right in the middle and flick your wrists and wisp this white into this black to make some gray highlights in this land. So I may have just a little bit too much black, but that's okay. I can layer up in a second, but I'm kind of lightly wisping in a random fashion this gray or this white into this black to make this gray. And in a few seconds, I'll probably layer up, but I want to see how that dries first. So we have the sky that needs just a few more to dry, and we can jump back to that in a second. But I want to go back in, and I'm going to add just a little bit more white to the bottom area that we just completed, and layer up that white just a bit by dabbing on a little bit more on the right and the left, and just a touch more in the center. Lightly wisp that together. That's going to make more detail as well. It's layered up, so it's becoming a bit more vibrant. And I'm liking the way that is looking. So all I have to do now at this point is, since my bottom mask is on, as I need to add my palm trees and my leaves. So before you add those, and you can pause the video and take a couple of minutes if you are seeing that your sky is still wet. Mine is mostly dry. I think I can get away with it, but you want to tap yours and make sure that there's nothing that's going to be on your hands and that it's not sticky. And as long as your canvas is dry to the touch, you can move forward with these final steps. Now, I'm going to move just a tad bit faster. However, feel free to pause the video, feel free to rewind the video, and, you know, do what you need to do in order to make sure that you have the most successful painting. So for these next couple of steps, I am switching back to my detailed paintbrush. Now, naturally, when we're using a smaller paintbrush, it can take things just a little bit longer to get done, but that's okay. We're quarantined. We don't got too much going on, right? So I'm going to make sure I'm adding just a touch of our dirty paint water right into the black paint that we have on our plates. And the reason why we're doing this is we're going to water down this black paint. And when we water down this black paint, and this is acrylic paint, we can stretch out the paint a little bit, and it makes the paint just a bit easier to work with. So for these next couple of steps, we need this paint to be a little bit more fluid, and that water is going to add a lot of fluidity to this paint. So make sure you got it nice and mixed. You don't want it to be too watery. So just a little bit of water at a time. And a trick to remember for the rest of the painting that's going to come in handy, especially when we get to the leaves, is every time I take some of this black paint, I'm going to smooth both sides of the paintbrush in my paint. And as we do that, it flattens out our paintbrush and makes it nice and sharp. So that way we can make sharper, tighter lines. So smooth the paintbrush out in the paint every time you grab black paint so that you can control your lines by turning in different directions. The more you practice as you're doing this, the better you're going to get along with it and kind of get the hang of it. So I'm going to start by simply filling in our triangle shapes that we had towards the beginning by simply starting wherever you like and outlining them first. It's important. You want to start outlining first, and then after you outline, then we can fill those in. So I'm going to move just a tad bit fast on this. And again, if you were realizing that your canvas is still wet in that sky, pause the video, take a couple of minutes, fan your canvas, try not to hit anybody nearby, and fill them on in and wait till it dries so at least you can fill it in. But this won't work well. This won't finish well if that canvas is still, that tree is still, sorry, that sky is still wet. So we want to make sure that's nice and dry. I'm just able to get away with it. So I got one tree filled in as far as the trunk goes. I'm going to take some more black paint. I'm going to head on over to this next tree. I'm going to fill that in. So I'm filling in these trees. Notice as we get to the top of the trees, those shapes do get thinner. So try not to make your trees thick all the way through. They should thin towards the top of the canvas. Make sure it's centered for you. I'm going to take just a couple more brush strokes because I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to painting. I want to make sure it looks good. So just going to smooth out those outer edges just a little bit. The more time you put into this, the better the outcome will be. So I got 2 trees, and this step is optional. You do not have to do this. Again, this is an optional step. If you'd like to add a little bit more detail to your tree, you can take a little bit of that white paint without even dipping your paintbrush in water and add just a streak on one side of each tree randomly. You could do right side or left side, doesn't make a difference. And once we got those streaks on, and we tone that paintbrush down again by wiping it on our canvas, then we can blend that streak of white into our freshly painted tree trunks. That gives it a little bit more of a shadow, makes it a bit more 2D. We're not 3D yet, but we are heading towards the 2D range. I want nice smooth brush strokes. And again, you don't have to do this. If you like the way your tree trunks are looking, then just go ahead and keep it. Play it safe, it's okay. Because we're getting towards the end, like really close to the end, so we don't want to mess anything up right now. But later on, there'll be time if you want to adjust it. So we have our black mask towards the bottom. We have our 2 tree trunks. My sky is pretty safe to work with at this point, so I'm going to do the sky next, and then I'm going to jump down and finish off the water, and we're going to be all done. So I'm going to continue using the same paintbrush. I'm going to go back into my black paint. I'm running out of fluid black paint, so I'm going to add a few more drops. But again, make sure you're not adding too much water. You don't want it to be too watery because it'll be a bit translucent and see-through. So a little bit of water, make sure it's nice and fluid, easy to push around the plate. And I'm going to go in here, and remember, every time I grab paint, I smooth both sides of my paintbrush out. And we're getting ready to do the leaves. So for these steps, these are very important. So every time you grab paint from now on to the end of the canvas, that we finish this canvas, smooth both sides out so that we can have sharper, tighter, controlled lines. So on these tops of these tree trunks, I'll do them slow, rewind the video if you need to. Always smooth your paintbrush out. I'm going to create about 5 or 6 curved lines, and the directions don't matter too much, but I like to always curve downward. So I'm going to make 5 curved downward lines that look almost like several smiley faces coming off the tips of our tree. That's 2, that's 3, that's 4, and that is 5. I'm going to come on the opposite side and do the exact same thing. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do the same thing by curving down 5 more lines, 5 more smiles, right from the tip of this tree trunk. 2, got 3, 4, got 1 more I want to put, and then let's do the 5th one just heading straight up. So those are starting to look like palm trees, but the fun part and also the appearingly tricky part is to take that paintbrush, smooth both sides out in that paint, and we're going to start from the base or the tip of this point right here, and from the tip of that top of that tree, we're going to make little wisps of paint coming down, and as we get towards the bottom of that line, they're getting smaller and smaller. We're going to do one side, and then we're going to do the other. Pretty easy. Now that's just one. We have 9 more to do. So as we get to these, you'll get used to it more and more. So again, I'll show you again. We are going to start right around here at the base, wisp out, and as you get towards the tip, make sure it's getting thinner and shorter and smaller. Do both sides. bit longer. Now it's getting shorter. I'm following the shape of that smile. I'm doing this to all my leaves. Now this is much easier than I'm making it look. So keep practicing, keep trying. I promise you'll get it. The biggest trick, the biggest clue to getting this done, the shortcut, smooth your paintbrush out every single time you grab more black paint. It works wonders. So we are almost to the end of our video. I know this took just a tad bit longer than I said, but you know, artwork takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day, but your masterpiece was. And that's what I'm hoping, masterpieces, is what I see from this. So I got one tree in. It's changing the whole dynamic of this painting. I'm going to add the second tree leaves in now, using the exact same thing. I'm going to speed up because at this point, by the time you get to the second tree, you should have a pretty good handle on this. It's a pretty simple trick. Just looks hard, but it's not. I'm going to go to the other side, do the exact same thing. For the rest of these leaves, I am almost done with my painting. Now remember to feel free to check out and flip through my website, www.lefthandedbandit.com. Left is spelled without an E, so it is LFT HANDED bandit.com. I'm also on Facebook under the Left Handed Bandit. I'm on Instagram under Left Handed Bandit. Feel free to follow me if you're already not following me. Feel free to leave a review on my Facebook page. I would really, really, really appreciate it. Feel free to tag me as you tag yourselves and other people onto your exclusive paint party. I want to add one more tree branch over here just because I'm a fake perfectionist when it comes to painting. And I feel like it's going to balance it out just a little bit more. It is. That's good enough for now. So at this point of the painting, we are technically done, but it is the fine bells and whistles that we add from here that'll take us to the end and make our paintings even that much more special. This is the point where you are allowed to try whatever you like. You can add all types of different things to your trees and your setting. I am going to do a few things very, very fast. Feel free to rewind. Feel free to look up ideas that you may want to add on your own. Think about adding names. Maybe we can add a boat back there. Maybe we can add some sun. But you can add whatever you like to your painting at this point. And I'm going to move very fast in these next few minutes and finish up my painting and show you the many different things that you can do. So as we work our way towards the end, I just want to thank you again for being a patron of Left Handed Bandit Artistic Services and ordering a paint party kit. This video process has been a process within itself, and we are, if you're not already viewing it, in the process of having these videos up on my website. However, this beginning process is looking like going the YouTube route. I'm not too proud of that line, but I think it's passable. So I'm going to add another outline to this bumpy edge right here. Let's make it pop just a little bit. Feel free to give your trees just a little bit more of an outline. It's up to you. You don't have to. You can give it some lines to show some texture. Completely up to you. The more work you put into this, the better it's going to come out. We are done with our paintings, and again, we're adding just different bells and whistles to really make this thing come to life. Now, a lot of people like this little trick right here. It's kind of the finishing touch for the most part, and that is a hammock. And to make your hammock, I just make one big smiley face connecting one side to the other in those trees. Make sure it's nice and rounded at the bottom. Take it a little bit deeper. And then as we make our swipes, we're going to make it bigger and bigger. Add a little bit more paint till it looks like a half a football shape almost. but think hammock. So it shouldn't be too big. Should be good enough right here. And then add a couple of bulges in there to show person's head and body. Kind of relaxing. He's somewhere on a beach. So we got that all filled in, and of course you can go back in and add some white detail to make it pop just a little bit. Little dapple brush strokes and details. Nice and smooth. Okay. And now I just want to add just a couple of quick things just to make this thing pop. Just trying to give you ideas. We're done with our painting. We're just doing some fine bells and whistles. Maybe add a little bit of sun somewhere. I'm indecisive. How about right here? It's not too big, but nevertheless, it's a sun. Maybe have to layer up on it just a little bit to make it look more like a sun, but that's okay. Got our sun in there. I'm gonna go in here and thinking about some more details on that water, but even before I do that, I'm going to add a few details in white to my trees. We can add some white lines here. Show the separation in the foliage. Then I'm going to, how about a little boat back here? Real small to show that it's nice and far. Maybe a couple, because, you know, beaches have that type of thing. Maybe a couple of birds. How about a couple birds here? We're out in tropical islands. And then last but not least, the silver touch that we add is just a couple of white strokes on top of that now pretty dry water, just to make that water pop a bit. Don't add too much though, you don't want to overcrowd it. But this is our finished result. This is I'd Rather Be on a Beach by the Left-Handed Bandit Artistic Services. This is powered by Art Addiction. I thank you for painting with me, and I hope to hear from you and paint with you again in the future. Thank you very much.